This is Biology 2, Chapter 2 on Principles of Ecology. In Part 1 of this video lecture, we will be taking a look at organisms and their relationships. We'll take a look at kind of who's who in the ecosystem and what makes up an ecosystem. Ecology is not just the study of the environment. It's also the study of how organisms live in that environment, how they behave in that environment, and how the environment really shapes the lives of organisms that live there. So there's a lot of interactions in ecology that we study. Ecologists are one of those branches of biology that really have the best of both worlds. Ecologists often work both out in the field and in the laboratory because ecology is the study of an organism's relationship and their interaction with the environment. Ecologists need to go out into the environment to observe, experiment, and model. They use a lot of different tools and methods. Many are specialized to the particular field of ecology that they work in. All ecology covers what we call the biosphere. The biosphere is the entire portion of the earth where living things are interacting. So we can have the atmosphere, which of course is the air, the ecosphere, which we consider all of the different biomes on the planet, the hydrosphere, which of course is all of the different types of water environments, freshwater, saltwater, etc., and the lithosphere, which is the actual Earth's crust. In ecology, not only are we studying the biotic factors or the living factors of an organism's environment. Biotic factors are plants, animals, microorganisms, fungus, the fishies, the bees, the turtles, the monkeys, all of that good stuff. Anything that's living in the ecosystem is called a biotic factor because remember, bio means life. Now, of course, these biotic things have to live somewhere. The abiotic factors, remember when we put a or an in front of a word in science, it means no or without. So abiotic factors are the non-living factors of an organism's environment. This would be, in general, the weather or the climate, water, temperature, the sunlight, different types of seasonal changes, different types of climatic changes. These are the abiotic factors, and they do shape how the biotic factors live in their environment. We talked about levels of organization in Biology 1, and we really started kind of at the microscopic level and ended at the organism level. Now with ecology, we're going to kind of keep going with that idea. So we're going to start from the lowest level of organization to the highest level of organization. Now for ecology, the lowest level of organization is studying one individual organism. So here we have, we'll call him Wally the worm. So Wally the worm is an individual living thing. He is an organism. Here we are in what appears to be giant worm land. Of course, Wally the worm is not all by himself. He's part of a population. A population is a group of organisms of the same species that live in generally the same area. So here we have Wally and his giant worm friends, Wanda and Wilbur and George. So they all live together in giant worm land. They are of the same species, they can interbreed together, and they live their life in giant worm land. Of course, in giant worm land, it's not just giant worms. We have a biological community. There are lots of different interacting populations. We have Carl the caribou there, the mini caribou. We have the flock of butterflies, the birds, the trees, the grass. All of that is part of the biological community. Biological community, of course, would be the biotic factors. Now, of course, we have to consider the abiotic factors because those shape how organisms live in their environment. So the ecosystem is the biological community plus the abiotic factors, the weather, the sunlight, the temperature, the snowfall, all of those types of things. We can group ecosystems together that are alike, and in ecology we call those biomes. For example, there's many different types of desert biomes. There's lots of different types of forest biomes. We have deciduous forest. We have a boreal forest. We have a tropical rainforest. Also the different types of aquatic ecosystems, ocean ecosystems, shoreline ecosystems, deep ocean ecosystems, coral reefs. And then, of course, we also have the polar aspects of the planet as well. So the north and south, southern regions, the Arctic and Antarctic as well. So that brings us up to the highest level of organization, which is the biosphere. So that's the layer of Earth that supports life, which is a good way to describe this because biosphere literally translates into life circle, which is what the biosphere is. Now, when we talk about ecology, we talk a lot about interactions. These interactions are taking place where the organisms live, and that's what we call their habitat. The organism finds most of its resources for survival in its habitat. Every organism in a population has what we call a niche. It's kind of role in the ecosystem. A niche is how an organism finds its food, space, shelter, and mates. There's lots of different ways, of course, for organisms to do that, and some individual organisms are very specific in their niche. They have a very specific role in an ecosystem. Others are a little less specialized and fit a lot of other different niches. Because we have a lot of different biological communities interacting in the same ecosystem, a lot of different species that are living in the same biome or ecosystem, competition tends to happen. Competition in nature is when more than one organism is going to be using or needing a resource at the same time. Competition can occur between the same species. For example, the pictures down below, we have the bear eating the salmon. That bear, along with all of the other bears in the population, are competing for the number of salmon that are coming up that river. But Mr. Bear also has to deal with Mr. Eagle there, who also likes to eat the salmon for his food source. So competition can also occur between different species. Different types of common interactions in ecology. Predation. This is very common. Predator-prey relationships are everywhere in both the plant and the animal kingdom. So predation is when one organism consumes another for food. This would be a win-lose situation. Obviously, the winner would be the predator and the loser would be the prey. No matter what type of nutrients are being consumed by a predator, whether it be plant material or meat, even deer can be considered a predator on a tree. They take the leaves, which is part of the living part of the tree, and they use that for their food source. Mutualism is another type of interaction that often happens. When something is mutual, it's kind of understood between two parties. A mutualistic relationship in biology is where both organisms benefit from that relationship. In some cases, mutualism can also be called a symbiotic relationship. Mutualism is a win-win situation for both organisms. One organism will often either receive food and the other receives protection or shelter from the other. A very interesting example of mutualism is the clownfish and the sea anemone. The clownfish have developed an immunity to the sea anemone's sting. The clownfish make sure to clean off the little parasites and things that tend to get on the sea anemone tentacles, And the clownfish gets protection for hanging out in the sea anemone because no predators will go near it because they will get stung. Another good example of this is the cleaner fish of the sea, where larger fish come to have these little cleaner fish pick the little barnacles and parasites and things off of the larger fish, so the larger fish gets a bath and the smaller fish gets a free meal. Commensalism is another type of interaction where one organism benefits and the other isn't really helped in the situation, but it's not harming it either. So it's kind of a win-neutral sort of situation. One organism in commensalism will usually use the other for protection or shelter. A good example of commensalism is you're walking along in the woods and a bug lands on your shoulder. You have no idea it's there. You keep walking along in the woods. You're not getting anything out of it, but the bug isn't hurting you and the bug is getting a free ride in the process. So a win-neutral type of situation is commensalism. Another type of common interaction in ecology is parasitism. This is where one organism benefits at the expense of another organism. Now, this is different from predation. A parasite does not want to kill its host organism right away. The parasite wants to kind of leach or mooch the nutrients from that organism as long as possible. So often the organism that hosts that parasite usually isn't aware that the parasite is even taking nutrients away from them. Some good examples of this, of course, is the ever popular mosquito, which we have to deal with often in the summertime. Mosquito comes by, it has an anesthetic property in its saliva that numbs the skin, so hopefully it is kind of being sneaky when it pokes its proboscis down under your epidermis and takes the blood and then flies away. You don't notice it later, usually until you get a mosquito bite. Ticks are another good example. They will feed off of the tissue and blood nutrients, again, usually without that host organism even knowing. Leeches are much the same way. They will attach to mostly fish or any animal that happens to be trudging through some water. They take their fill of blood, and once they've had their fill, then they fall off. Again, the parasite doesn't want to kill their host necessarily. They want to keep them alive as long as possible so they can continue their mooching process. This has been part 1 of chapter 2 on principles of ecology.